Story 1. Death of Natural Causes. I've spent the last 5 years driving across the country for work, staying in places that range from barely habitable to active crime scene. You develop a thick skin for it. You learn to ignore the stains on the carpet, the burn marks on the nightstand, and the mysterious hairs in the bathtub. You check for bed bugs, you jam a chair under the doorknob, and you try to pass out as quickly as possible. That night, I pulled into the motor lodge somewhere off I-40 in Oklahoma. It was 11:30 p.m., and rain was hammering the windshield hard enough that I could barely see the neon vacancy sign buzzing in the dark. I didn't care about the quality. I just needed a mattress and a roof. The guy at the front desk was behind bulletproof glass, which should have been my first warning, but I was too tired to process it. I paid cash, took the physical key for room 112, and drove around the back. Room 112 was exactly what I expected. It smelled of stale tobacco smoke masked by an industrial amount of lemon-scented cleaning spray. The carpet was a shade of brown that hid dirt well, and the bedspread looked like it hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. I locked the deadbolt, engaged the chain, and threw my duffel bag on the luggage rack. I stripped down to my boxers and t-shirt, brushed my teeth in the stained sink, and collapsed onto the bed. I was out within minutes, but I wasn't out for long. I woke up around 1 a.m. I wasn't sure what roused me at first. The rain had stopped, and the room was dead silent. Then I heard it. Click, rattle. It was coming from directly above my head. I lay still, staring up at the dark popcorn ceiling. My eyes adjusted to the gloom, tracing the outline of the square ventilation grate screwed into the wall just above the headboard. It was an old metal register, the kind with the little lever to open and close the slats. It wasn't the rhythmic clanking of an old heating system. I know what settling pipes sound like. This was different. It sounded metallic, deliberate, followed by a soft, consistent airflow. I sat up, annoyed. The room was freezing, but the air coming from that vent didn't feel like AC. It felt pressured. And there was a smell. It was faint first, cutting through the lemon cleaner. Something sweet, sickeningly sweet, like overripe fruit mixed with rubbing alcohol. I tried to ignore it, pulling the sheet over my head, but the rattling persisted. It was just irregular enough to be maddening. It sounded like something was vibrating against the metal grate from the inside. I groaned, threw the covers off, and stood up on the mattress. I pulled my phone out and clicked on the flashlight, aiming it at the vent. The grate was painted over with layers of thick white landlord paint, caking the edges. But as I looked closer, I noticed something odd. The screws holding the grate in place weren't painted over. The heads were shiny, clean metal, silver. Someone had unscrewed this recently. The curiosity and a growing sense of unease got the better of me. I fished a dime out of my jeans pocket on the floor and climbed back onto the bed. I slotted the dime into the screw head. It turned easily, too easily. It was barely finger tight. I removed the bottom 2 screws and tilted the grate upward. I peered into the dark void of the ductwork. It wasn't a standard duct. It didn't go up into the ceiling or connect to a central unit. It was a straight shot through the wall, connecting directly to room next door, room 113. And resting inside the shaft, snaking its way toward my face, was a black rubber tube. It was taped to the floor of the duct with silver duct tape to keep it steady, aiming the nozzle directly through the slats of my vent. A small, steady stream of mist was puffing out of the tube. I leaned in closer, and the smell hit me like a physical blow. That sweet chemical stench. My head swam instantly. The room tilted. My knees buckled, and I had to grab the headboard to keep from falling off the mattress. Chloroform or ether, or some homemade cocktail meant to knock a horse out. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the dizziness. I scrambled backwards, falling off the bed and landing hard on the carpet. I coughed, trying to clear my lungs, covering my nose with my shirt. Then I heard it, a sound from the other end of the duct. "Damn it," a voice whispered. It was low, male, and sounded frustrated. Then came the sound of movement from room 113. Heavy boots hitting the floor, the sound of a metal canister clanking against the table. I didn't pack. I didn't put my pants on. I grabbed my car keys and my wallet from the nightstand, unlocked the door with trembling hands, and sprinted out into the humid night air in my underwear. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I drove 3 miles down the road to a brightly lit gas station before I finally stopped shaking enough to call 911. The police arrived at the motel 20 minutes later. I waited in the gas station lot until an officer came to get me. When we got back to the motel, room 113 was empty. The door was open. The guest next door had fled, but he'd left his kit behind in his haste. The police found a modified pesticide sprayer filled with industrial solvents and anesthetics. They found the rubber tubing. They also found a collection of room keys, master keys that worked for every door in the motel. But the detective told me the worst part while I was giving my statement, wrapped in a blanket in the back of an ambulance. "You're lucky you woke up," he said, looking at his notepad with a grim expression. "We looked up the history of room 112. We've had 3 deaths in that room over the last 6 months." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Murders?" He shook his head. "That's the thing. They were all ruled natural causes. Heart failure in their sleep, an elderly traveler, a businessman with high blood pressure. Nobody questioned it. The tox screen for this stuff clears out of the system in a few hours. If you hadn't found that tube, you would have just gone back to sleep and stopped breathing." I never drive at night anymore, and when I check into a hotel now, I don't just check for bed bugs. I bring a screwdriver, and I always check the vents.
Story 2. The Wrong Key. I don't believe in gut feelings. I'm an engineer. I believe in data, structural integrity, and logic. But looking back at the night I checked into the roadside motel off Highway 9, I wish I had listened to the primal part of my brain that was screaming at me to get back in the car and drive until the gas tank ran dry. It was 2 a.m. I was exhausted, 5 hours past the point where coffee stops working. The motel was one of those single-story L-shaped places that thrived in the 70s and had been slowly rotting ever since. The sign said, "The Pines." The lobby smelled like stale coffee and floor wax. The night manager was arguing loudly with someone on the phone. He barely acknowledged me when I walked in, just sliding a registration card across the counter and pointing to a pen. I filled it out, name, license plate, signature. I was leaning on the high counter, rubbing my eyes, just waiting for the key. There was another guy standing a few feet away from me, near the brochure rack. I didn't pay him much attention. Peripheral vision just registered a dark hoodie and hands shoved deep into pockets. The manager finally hung up the phone, looking flushed and annoyed. He grabbed my credit card, ran it, and then turned his back to me to grab a receipt from the printer that was starting awfully slowly. I looked down. A heavy brass key with a green plastic tag was sitting right next to my hand. The tag read 12. The manager had tossed it there before turning around to give me my receipt. I grabbed it, muttered a thanks, and walked out before he even turned back around to hand me my receipt. I just wanted to sleep. The motel layout was confusing. The numbers didn't seem to follow a logical sequence. I found rooms 1 through 10 easily enough, but then the walkway split. Room 12 was at the very end of this dark spur, completely isolated from the main parking lot. The window was covered with blackout curtains, so thick they looked like sheets of plywood from the outside. I jammed the key into the lock. It was stiff, but with a hard twist, the deadbolt snapped back. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me wasn't the sight, it was the smell. It was a thick, humid wall of stench that gagged me instantly. It didn't smell like mildew or old cigarettes. It smelled metallic, sharp and coppery, like a handful of pennies. Underneath that was something sweeter, heavier, rot, spoiled meat left out in the sun. "Hello?" I called out, my hand fumbling for the light switch by the door. I flicked it up. Nothing. I stepped further in, letting the door close behind me to block out the humidity of the night, and pulled out my phone. I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, and my stomach dropped. The room had been stripped. There was no bed, no dresser, no TV. The carpet had been ripped up, exposing the bare concrete slab foundation. But the concrete wasn't bare. Every inch of the floor and the walls up to the ceiling was covered in heavy-duty clear plastic sheeting. It was taped at the seams with silver duct tape, creating a sealed, watertight kill box. In the dead center of the room, facing the door, was a heavy metal chair, bolted to the floor. Thick leather straps, the kind you'd see in an old asylum, were attached to the arms and legs of the chair. I froze, the beam of my light trembling. I moved the light down to the floor around the chair. The plastic there was stained. Dark, crusty flakes that looked like rust were scattered in a wide arc around the seat. Near the back of the room, I saw a drainage hole that had been drilled crudely through the foundation. A garden hose fed into it. This wasn't a renovation. Contractors don't install restraint chairs. I didn't investigate. I didn't call out. The engineer in me shut down, and the animal took over. I spun around, fumbling for the doorknob. My hands were slick with sweat, slipping on the metal. I gripped it tight, twisted, and threw myself out into the humid night air. I ran. I didn't look back at room 12. I sprinted along the dark path, past the hedges, back to the brightly lit lobby. I burst through the door, chest heaving, startling the night manager. "What the hell is going on in room 12?" I shouted. The manager looked at me, bewildered. "Excuse me?" "Room 12. I slammed the brass key on the counter. "There's no furniture. There's plastic everywhere. There's a chair with straps." The manager stared at the key. His face went pale. He didn't look angry. He looked terrified. "Sir," he said slowly, his voice trembling, "I didn't give you the key to room 12. Room 12 has been out of order for storage since 2019. Nobody goes in there. We lost the key years ago." He reached under the counter and pulled out a different key, holding it up. "I have the key to room 21 right here. I was holding it in my hand when I turned around to give you your receipt, but you were already gone." I looked down at the brass key on the counter, the one I had used. But it was on the counter," I stammered. "Someone slid it to me." My blood ran cold. The guy in the hoodie, the one standing by the brochures, the one I had ignored. The realization hit me harder than the smell in that room. The manager hadn't made a mistake. The guy in the hoodie had been waiting in the lobby. He wasn't a guest. He slid it to me while the manager's back was turned. He didn't want me to go to room 21. He wanted me to go to room 12. He knew I was tired enough to not wait for the slow printer to give out a receipt. He wanted me to walk into that soundproofed, plastic-wrapped room and close the door. To my luck,
He was late just by a few seconds.
Story 3. The Smart Home.
I'm a software engineer, so when I found an Airbnb in Seattle that was marketed as a next-gen smart home, I was genuinely excited. I was in town for a high-stakes contract with a cloud computing firm, and after 10-hour days of staring at code, I wanted a place that felt like the future. The apartment was a sleek, minimalist studio. Everything, and I mean everything, was controlled by a central AI system called Iris. There were no light switches, no thermostats, and no physical keys. Just a series of high-resolution tablets mounted on the walls and an app on my phone. The host, a guy named Marcus, who I only ever spoke to via text, bragged that the house could predict a guest's needs. The first 2 nights were fine, though the convenience was a bit heavy-handed. The lights would dim the second I sat on the sofa to watch TV. The blinds would crawl shut as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was cool, until it wasn't. On the 3rd night, I was in the shower when I heard the wall-mounted tablet in the bathroom chime. "Guest detected in kitchen," the voice announced. I froze, the water stinging my eyes. I was alone. I hadn't ordered food, and the front door was a biometric smart lock that sent a notification to my phone whenever it opened. I checked my phone. Nothing. I assumed it was a glitch. I'm a dev. I know how janky motion sensors can be, especially cheap ones. I finished my shower, walked into the kitchen in my towel, and found nothing out of place. But then the temperature started to act up. It was a chilly Seattle night, but the AC kicked on, dropping the room to a crisp 60 degrees. I went to the tablet above my nightstand to override it. The screen was frozen. A small spinning wheel sat in the center with the text, "Firmware update in progress, do not power off." I went to bed, shivering under the duvet. Around 1 a.m., I was jolted awake by a sound that made my blood run cold. It was the heavy electronic clunk of the bedroom door's deadbolt sliding into place. I jumped out of bed and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't budge. This wasn't a standard privacy lock. It was a commercial-grade electronic bolt. I checked my phone. No service. The Wi-Fi icon on the top bar had a small X through it. The Iris system had taken the house offline. Then the nightstand tablet glowed to life. The screen wasn't the usual dashboard. It was a grainy, high-angle video feed. It took me a second to realize I was looking at myself, standing in the dark bedroom. The camera was hidden inside the tablet's frame, right at eye level. A text box appeared over my image. Live preview, lot 346, status, healthy, restrained. Below that, a chat window scrolled by at lightning speed. User 88, can we see his hands? I need to see the dexterity if he's a programmer. User 231, does he have any tattoos or identifying marks? The client is specific for clean skin for the premium tier. User 15, check the biometric data on the sidebar. I need someone with high cardiac endurance for the overseas transit. Is he a smoker? Admin, patience. The auction will begin soon. The temperature began to drop again. I could see my breath in the blue light of the screen. The AC was roaring now, pumping freezing air into the room. It wasn't optimizing my sleep, it was preserving me. I heard the front door of the apartment, the main entrance, unlock. There was no notification, just the heavy thump of the door hitting the wall. Then the sound of heavy boots on the polished concrete floor of the living room. They weren't trying to be quiet. They knew I was trapped. I'm not a fighter, but I understand systems. Every smart home has a vulnerability, the physical layer. Most of these unbreakable smart locks are designed with a fail-open state. It's a fire safety requirement. If the control bus loses power or short circuits, the physical bolt is supposed to retract so people don't burn to death in a power outage. I looked at the tablet. It was hardwired into the wall. I didn't have tools, but I had my heavy-duty laptop power brick. I wrapped the cord around my hand, took a breath, and smashed the brick into the tablet screen as hard as I could. The glass shattered. I didn't stop. I dug the metal prongs of the charger into the guts of the device, twisting and tearing at the copper wiring behind the mounting bracket. Sparks showered my hands, stinging my skin. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the entire apartment went pitch black. The hum of the AC cut out. Click. The bedroom deadbolt retracted. I didn't grab my laptop. I didn't even grab my shoes. I shoved the bedroom door open and sprinted into the hallway. In the living room, a man was standing by the kitchen island. He was tall, wearing a dark tactical vest and a surgical mask. He was holding a heavy duffel bag and a roll of industrial zip ties. He lunged for me, but he was surprised by the darkness. I didn't head for the front door. I knew he'd be expecting that. I dove toward the kitchen. I remembered from the tour that the back balcony door had a manual thumb-thurn. It was the only non-automated exit in the whole place, kept there for aesthetic reasons. I screamed, a raw, terrified sound, and threw my entire weight against the balcony door. The thumb-turn snapped, the door swung wide, and I didn't look back. I jumped from the first-story balcony into the wet bushes of the alleyway below. I ran 4 blocks in my bare feet before I saw a late-night diner. I burst inside, shaking and bleeding from the sparks, and begged the waitress to call the police. When the police arrived at the Airbnb 20 minutes later, the place was scrubbed. The tablets were gone, the iris system was completely wiped, and even the listing on the app had vanished. The police told me the Marcus I'd been texting was using a burner number registered in Eastern Europe. I still work in tech, but I moved back to a place with old-fashioned brass keys and dumb light switches. Every time I see a tablet mounted on a wall in a hotel lobby, I feel the phantom sting of sparks on my palms, and I have to walk away. That tablet wasn't a tool for me. It was a catalog for someone else.
If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. You can also send your stories to the email in the description.